Terrell Owens. Terrell Owens didn't become one of the most hated figures in football overnight. His reputation came from years of making headlines for all the wrong reasons. While there's no denying his Hall of Fame-level talent, he had a knack for creating tension wherever he went. Over 15 seasons and 5 teams, Owens made it clear he valued the spotlight more than the locker room harmony. His troubles really took off in San Francisco, where he played from 1996 to 2003. What started as fun touchdown celebrations soon turned into theatrical stunts aimed at grabbing media attention. In one infamous moment in 2000, after scoring against the Cowboys, he ran straight to the star logo at midfield and danced on it. Not once, but twice. On his second trip, Cowboys safety George T. laid him out. Fans saw it not just as showboating, but as a clear sign he cared more about putting on a show than respecting the game. Things went from bad to worse in Philadelphia. He joined the Eagles in 2004 and helped carry them to the Super Bowl. But he didn't stick to football. Just 1 year into a 7-year deal, he demanded a raise, hired Drew Rosenhaus, and blasted the front office in public. He even claimed the team would be undefeated with Brett Favre instead of Donovan McNabb, something that caused a permanent rift between the two. That was just the start. Owens was eventually suspended after he criticized McNabb during a TV interview, got into it with Hugh Douglas at practice, and refused to take responsibility. Meanwhile, his agent gave one of the most awkward press conferences in sports history, answering nearly every question with "next question." It just added fuel to the fire. Then came Dallas. Owens joined the Cowboys in 2006 and stayed through 2008, where he once again stirred the pot. He had issues with Tony Romo, despite being heavily featured in the offense. After a game, he gave an emotional defense of Romo, saying, "That's my quarterback," which quickly became a meme. Most people didn't buy it. They saw it as another performance, not a genuine moment. Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown's hatred developed through a series of unpredictable behaviors and public outbursts that turned him from an elite receiver into one of the league's most criticized figures, all in less than 2 years. His unraveling began in 2018, his final season with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That year, he posted 104 receptions for 1,297 yards, but his growing conflicts with teammates and coaches caused deep tension within the locker room. The situation came to a head when Brown skipped the team's final practice and walkthrough for a critical Week 17 matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. His absence was unannounced and unauthorized, leaving his teammates without their star receiver for a game that would decide their playoff position. As a result, he was benched. The incident fueled an open rift with quarterback Ben Roethlisberger, which soon spilled over into social media, where Brown publicly questioned his former quarterback's leadership. After being traded to the Oakland Raiders in 2019, Brown's behavior quickly spiraled. He missed mandatory practices due to frostbite sustained during cryotherapy. That was followed by a heated dispute with general manager Mike Mayock over the NFL's updated helmet policy, which banned his preferred model. During the confrontation, Brown allegedly called Mayock a racial slur and threatened physical violence, an act that crossed professional boundaries. The Raiders eventually released Brown after he shared a private phone call with head coach Jon Gruden on social media without permission, broke team rules about online behavior, and asked for his release via a dramatic Instagram post. Not long after, he signed with the New England Patriots. That stint, however, lasted only 11 days. Brown was accused of sexual assault and rape by his former trainer, Brittany Taylor. The allegations included detailed claims of inappropriate conduct, which Brown denied. However, the legal pressure prompted the Patriots to sever ties.
Ndamukong Suh. Ndamukong Suh built his career as a powerful defensive lineman, but also as one of the NFL's most fined and suspended players. His reputation for dirty play began as early as his rookie season in 2010 with the Detroit Lions, and only intensified from there. On Thanksgiving Day in 2011, with millions watching, Suh stomped on the arm of Packers guard Evan Dietrich Smith after the play was already over. Suh tried to explain it as a misunderstanding, claiming he lost his balance. But the footage showed a different story, one where Suh looked down and deliberately drove his foot onto Dietrich Smith's arm. The league suspended him for 2 games without pay, costing him $164,000. That moment became symbolic of his reputation for unsportsmanlike conduct. There were other incidents too. He delivered a late and dangerous hit to Bears quarterback Jay Cutler in 2010, slamming him to the ground after the ball had been released. He was fined $15,000. In 2012, he kicked Texans quarterback Matt Schaub in the groin while on the ground. Another accident Sue insisted wasn't intentional. The video suggested otherwise. During just his first 4 seasons, Sue was fined over $216,000. Fans and players began to view him not as a dominant player, but as someone who targeted opponents with intent to harm. That label followed him across stints with the Dolphins, Buccaneers, and Eagles. Vontaze Burfict. Vontaze Burfict earned one of the most notorious reputations in NFL history, not just because of how hard he played, but because of how dangerous he became. As a linebacker for the Cincinnati Bengals from 2012 to 2018, Burfict developed a pattern of brutal, illegal hits that led to one of the longest cumulative suspensions in league history. The defining moment of his career happened during the 2016 Wild Card playoff game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. With less than 20 seconds on the clock, Burfict launched himself helmet first into a defenseless Antonio Brown, striking him square in the head. The hit drew a 15-yard penalty, moving the Steelers into easy field goal range, which they converted for the win. Brown was diagnosed with a concussion and missed the following playoff game. The hit became a symbol of Burfict's complete disregard for players' safety. That wasn't an isolated incident. In earlier matchups against the Steelers, Burfict was caught on camera twisting players' ankles after the whistle. His 2015 hit on Le'Veon Bell looked like a deliberate attempt to injure, with knee-to-knee contact that sidelined Bell for the rest of the year. These weren't the kinds of hits that came with the territory. They seemed personal, targeted, and beyond the bounds of even the most aggressive play. Over the course of his career, Burfict was suspended for a total of 18 games, a record for on-field behavior. His final suspension came in 2019 after a helmet-to-helmet hit on Colts tight end Jack Doyle. That 12-game ban, the longest ever for an in-game incident, effectively ended his career. No team was willing to take a chance on him again. To many fans and players, Burfict wasn't just reckless. He was seen as someone who weaponized the game itself. His name became synonymous with unnecessary violence, and his presence on the field felt like a threat, not just to opponents, but to the integrity of football as a whole.
Ray Rice. Ray Rice's story became one of the most defining and disturbing turning points in NFL history, not just because of what he did, but because of how the league initially responded. Rice was a star running back for the Baltimore Ravens, a key part of their offense, and widely respected on the field. But in February 2014, everything changed. Rice was arrested for assaulting his then-fiancée, Janae Palmer, in an elevator at the Revel Casino in Atlantic City. Early reports only described it as a physical altercation, and the first video released by TMZ showed him dragging her unconscious body out of the elevator. Palmer appeared limp and unresponsive. The footage shocked the public, but the NFL responded with only a 2-game suspension. It was seen as incredibly lenient given the apparent violence. The situation escalated months later when a second video showing the elevator's interior surfaced. In this clip, Rice is seen delivering a single, vicious punch that knocked Palmer out cold. The video left no doubt. It wasn't a scuffle. It wasn't mutual. It was a deliberate pact of violence. Rice looked down at her body, made no move to help, and then dragged her into the hallway like she was nothing. The images were chilling. After the second video was released, the Ravens immediately cut ties with Rice, and the NFL suspended him indefinitely. The backlash was fierce, not just against Rice, but against Commissioner Roger Goodell and the entire league. People demanded to know why the NFL had handed down such a light punishment when the full footage was reportedly available all along. The league claimed it hadn't seen the second video until it went public, but few believed that explanation. Rice never played another down in the NFL. He tried to make a comeback, but no team signed him. His name became permanently linked with domestic violence and with the league's initial failure to treat it seriously. Even after marrying Palmer and issuing multiple apologies, the damage was done. For many fans, his career ended not because of what happened in that elevator, but because he showed the world exactly who he was, and the world couldn't forget it. Richie Incognito. Richie Incognito's name became synonymous with bullying in the NFL. His reputation had always leaned toward the aggressive, both on the field and in the locker room. But it wasn't until the 2013 scandal involving teammate Jonathan Martin that the full extent of his behavior was exposed. What happened in Miami wasn't just rough talk between players. It was prolonged psychological abuse. Martin, a young offensive lineman, endured constant harassment. Incognito used racial slurs, made violent threats, and treated him like a target instead of a teammate. In one voicemail from April 2013, Incognito said, "I'm gonna slap your real mother across the face," and used multiple racial epithets, despite Martin being biracial. This wasn't locker room banter. It was cruelty, repeated day after day. But it didn't stop at words. Incognito demanded Martin pay $15,000 for a Vegas trip he didn't even attend. Martin was also pressured into covering expensive team dinners and social events, where he'd then be further ostracized. These weren't optional gestures. They were enforced through intimidation and backed by the fear of being excluded, mocked, or attacked. The final straw came in October 2013. Martin entered the team cafeteria, and when he sat down, a group of players, including Incognito, stood up and walked away. The humiliation was the last in a long line. Martin left the facility, and the story soon became public. The NFL commissioned an independent investigation led by attorney Ted Wells. The findings were clear. Incognito had led a pattern of abuse that violated every standard of decency and professionalism. He was suspended indefinitely and became the face of toxic masculinity in professional sports. While some teammates defended him, claiming it was just how football worked, most fans and analysts saw it differently. Incognito wasn't holding someone accountable or toughening them up. He was breaking them down. Though he eventually returned to football and played for other teams, the shadow of that scandal never really lifted. Richie Incognito will always be remembered less for his blocking skills and more for showing just how cruel a locker room could become when no one speaks up.
Michael Vick. Michael Vick's story is one of the most painful and complicated in sports. At the height of his career, he was seen as revolutionary, a quarterback with an arm like a cannon and the speed of a running back. He was the face of the Atlanta Falcons, a once-in-a-generation talent who'd signed a massive $130 million contract. Then the dogfighting scandal hit, and everything changed. Between 2001 and 2007, Vick financed and operated Bad News Kennels, a dogfighting ring based out of his property in rural Virginia. It wasn't just a hobby. It was an organized, brutal operation where pit bulls were bred and trained to fight for money. The dogs were housed in kennels specifically designed for combat, with equipment like treadmills and hanging devices used to condition them. Gambling played a huge part. These weren't just backyard brawls. This was a business. What shocked people even more than the fights was the cruelty. Dogs that didn't perform well weren't simply retired or given away. They were killed by hanging, drowning, electrocution, or being slammed into the ground. In one especially gruesome incident, Vick personally helped kill 6 to 8 dogs because they didn't measure up in test fights. In April 2007, federal investigators raided the property. They found dog carcasses, blood-stained equipment, and records of betting. At first, Vick denied everything, to NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, to Falcons owner Arthur Blank, and to the public. But the evidence was overwhelming. He eventually pled guilty to federal charges of conspiracy related to dogfighting and served 23 months in prison. When the details became public, fans didn't just turn on him, they were horrified. The idea that someone so admired could be involved in something so violent and calculated was hard to process. For animal rights groups and many sports fans, Vick's actions weren't just criminal, they were unforgivable. Vick did return to the NFL, playing for the Philadelphia Eagles and a few other teams. He expressed remorse and even worked with animal advocacy groups, but the stigma never left. To this day, many fans still refuse to cheer for him or acknowledge his accomplishments. For them, the image of what happened at Bad News Kennels overshadows anything he did on the field. Aaron Hernandez. Aaron Hernandez's fall was unlike anything the NFL had ever seen. He went from a rising star with the New England Patriots to a convicted murderer in just a few short years. What shocked people most wasn't just the crime, it was how quickly the mask came off. One moment he was catching touchdowns, the next he was being led away in handcuffs. Hernandez joined the Patriots in 2010 and quickly made a name for himself. By 2012, he'd signed a 5-year, $40 million contract extension. He looked like a cornerstone for the future. But behind the scenes, things were spiraling. There were gang connections, drug use, and stories of escalating violence. The most damning event happened in June 2013, when Odin Lloyd, a semi-professional football player dating Hernandez's fiance's sister, was found shot to death in an industrial park not far from Hernandez's home. Security footage from Hernandez's house showed him holding what looked like a gun both before and after the murder took place. The Patriots didn't wait. They released him the same day he was arrested. In 2015, he was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Even after that, the story wasn't over. He was charged in connection with a 2012 double homicide in Boston, where two men, Daniel de Abreu and Safiro Furtado, were shot after what appeared to be a nightclub encounter. Although he was acquitted in that case, the fact that he was even a suspect in multiple killings revealed how much he had hidden from the public and his team. In April 2017, Hernandez was found dead in his prison cell, having taken his own life. A posthumous examination of his brain showed severe chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a condition linked to repeated head trauma. His family argued that CTE had played a role in his behavior, but to many fans, that wasn't enough to explain what he had done. They saw it as a possible factor, but not a justification. Hernandez's story left a deep scar on the league. He wasn't just a player who made bad decisions. He was someone who had fooled everyone, his coaches, his teammates, and the fans. And when the truth came out, it changed the way people thought about character, risk, and what it really means to know someone in professional sports. O.J. Simpson might be the most polarizing figure the NFL has ever produced. For years, he was beloved, a Hall of Fame running back, a charismatic broadcaster, and a Hollywood actor. He had charm, a $1 million smile, and the kind of crossover appeal that made him a household name even after his playing days ended. But then came 1994, and everything changed. On the night of June 12, 1994, Simpson's ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ronald Goldman were found brutally murdered outside Nicole's home in Brentwood, Los Angeles. The scene was horrific. Nicole had been nearly decapitated, and Goldman had defensive wounds all over his body, suggesting he fought hard before he died. Almost immediately, suspicion turned toward O.J., who had a history of domestic abuse, including a 1989 arrest for assaulting Nicole. When the LAPD came to arrest him on June 17th, he didn't show. Instead, he fled in a white Ford Bronco driven by his friend Al Cowlings. What followed was one of the most surreal moments in television history, a slow-speed police chase watched live by nearly 95 million people. Inside the Bronco, Simpson held a gun to his head and threatened suicide. It was a scene that felt like fiction, but was horrifyingly real.
The trial that followed in 1995 became the most watched and dissected criminal case in American history. The evidence seemed overwhelming: blood matching Simpson's found at the scene, a glove discovered on his property, and a timeline that placed him at the murder location. But his legal team, dubbed the Dream Team, argued that the evidence had been mishandled and planted by racist police officers. Their strategy worked. On October 3, 1995, Simpson was found not guilty. The verdict tore the country in two. Many white Americans believed justice had been denied, while many black Americans viewed the outcome as long overdue accountability for a justice system that so often failed them. Still, the public's opinion of Simpson had permanently shifted. Even though he was acquitted, a civil court later found him liable for the deaths, ordering him to pay $33.5 million in damages. He never recovered his reputation. Later run-ins with the law, including a 2007 armed robbery conviction that led to a prison sentence, only deepened the public's disdain. Today, O.J. Simpson is known less for his football legacy and more for the trial that divided a nation. He's a cautionary tale about fame, violence, and how quickly a public figure can fall from grace. Deshaun Watson went from being one of the NFL's brightest young quarterbacks to the most controversial active player in the league. He wasn't just accused of one or two serious infractions, he was accused by over 25 women of sexual misconduct, all centered around massage therapy sessions. The volume and nature of the allegations shocked fans and reshaped his legacy almost overnight. It all began in March 2021 when Houston massage therapist Ashley Solis came forward. She claimed Watson exposed himself during a session at her home and purposely touched her hand with his genitals. She said he became more aggressive, ignored her protests, and pressured her to engage in sexual acts. Solis's decision to go public opened the floodgates. Within weeks, 22 more women filed lawsuits detailing similar experiences. The allegations painted a disturbing pattern. Women described being coerced, touched inappropriately, and in some cases assaulted during private sessions. Some said he forced them to perform oral sex or ejaculated on them. Most felt intimidated by his status and strength and worried about retaliation. It wasn't just isolated behavior, it was coordinated, repeated, and deeply unsettling. Despite the legal storm swirling around him, the Cleveland Browns made a stunning move in March 2022. They traded 6 draft picks, including 3 first-rounders, to acquire Watson and gave him a fully guaranteed $230 million contract, the largest in NFL history at the time. The deal included protections to reduce his financial loss during a likely suspension, leading many to believe the team was prioritizing winning over ethics. Watson was eventually suspended for 11 games and fined $5 million. The punishment, many argued, was too light given the number and severity of the allegations. When he returned to play in December 2022, protests erupted in stadiums, online, and in front of team facilities. His comeback felt like a slap in the face to those advocating for accountability and justice. Watson settled with 24 of his accusers, with total payouts estimated between $33 and $55 million. To the public, these settlements felt like hush money rather than acts of contrition. And the story didn't end there. In September 2024, more allegations came to light, bringing the known total to 27. Once again, Watson reached a confidential settlement. To his critics, Watson isn't just a player who made bad decisions. He's a symbol of how wealth, status, and athletic talent can shield someone from real consequences. The anger toward him isn't just about what he's accused of, it's about what his return says about professional sports and who it protects.